Hey, this is Doc Yates. I'm a naturopathic doctor, registered acupuncturist, and a kinesiologist, owner of the Yates Naturopathic Clinic, and the founder of the interactive health website, Able Health. And this is the Simply Health Podcast, a show for females where I work to simplify and demystify the secrets of achieving optimal health naturally, based on my own experience in working with thousands of female patients over the past 15 years of my clinical practice. Welcome to Simply Health. Hey, this is Doc Yates, and today we are going to discuss 5 tips to getting awesome sleep in menopause and perimenopause. So this is actually continued from my talk previously when we had talked about weight loss in perimenopause and the different factors that can play a role in your ability to lose weight, sleep being one of those important factors. So today we want to talk about how you can improve your sleep in perimenopause and menopause so that you can improve your weight in perimenopause and menopause. So generally speaking, typical treatments for this that you would see is often either the sleep hygiene route, which is important. So, reducing screen time before bed, trying to make sure that you're not getting any bright lights and calming down, maybe just reading a book before bed as opposed to something on a screen. All of those things are important. The next thing you're often told will be, the next route is often sleeping pills. And while sleeping pills can help you fall asleep, they don't really give an actual deeper sleep, and they often make people feel really drowsy and kind of drug the next feeling. So those are don't make the top 5 favorite list, that's for sure. So the next thing that we want to talk about is, how I've basically worked with this throughout clinic, being a naturopath, is that when I first started, I would often just use the classic kind of sleep remedies, different extracts, things like valerian, these types of things that you've heard of, melatonin, all of the basics. And I found it was just so hit and miss, or certain aspects of sleep would improve and other aspects would not. Like maybe if someone had problems falling asleep, you'd see a change with that, but then they would still be waking up, and not necessarily waking up because of hot flashes or night sweats, but just waking up throughout the night. So throughout the last 15 years of practice, I've refined this quite a bit, and I want to share with you some of this experience and what I've learned today so that you can improve your own sleep. So the first thing that you need to realize is that for your sleep disturbance, when you wake up matters a lot, because that tells me it tells me a lot in terms of what we're probably working with for an imbalance that's leading to your sleep issues. Like if you're having problems falling asleep initially, but once you fall asleep, then you're out for the night, that part is really easy to correct, and that's where the remedies like different basic sleep aids like magnesium, melatonin, valerian, those things can play a very big role. But if you're waking up in the middle of the night, typically a couple hours after falling asleep, and often I see people waking that between 1 to 2 in the morning, and then they're either stuck awake or then their sleep is really restless from that point in and out. That pattern is very common with perimenopause and menopause, and that is related with your progesterone dropping. So it doesn't always mean that you've got really low progesterone, though that's typically the case. It means that you have lower progesterone typically, comparatively to what your body was sitting at before. So it's that drop from your previous level to where you are now that disrupts your sleep. This is a drop, so the body does kind of cycle through progesterone throughout the menstrual cycle. And after you ovulate, which is at the middle of your cycle, progesterone levels peak, and then before your period, they dive again. And what you commonly see really, really early in perimenopause sleep disturbances is that the sleep's pretty good except for that week before your period. And that's because the body's progesterone levels are dropping even more, and it's that drop that is throwing off your levels. As progesterone levels continue to drop, it's almost like it's just staying low, and then you'll see, instead of just being before your period and during that PMS time, you'll see sleep disturbances all of the time. And so those are the factors that you want to consider. So again, when someone's waking up 1 to 3 in the morning, and at that point either stuck awake or restless, tossing and turning, progesterone levels. You have to test and address progesterone. The next thing kind of ties back in, so in terms of remedies, there's a lot of things that you can use that are basic sleep remedies that can help someone fall asleep initially. So, and those are all things that I feel should be included into your basic sleep hygiene. The most basic of all these is magnesium. So magnesium is great because it has so many other benefits. It's not going to keep you from waking up. And for the vast majority of perimenopausal cases at least, it's not going to stop you from waking up, but it will make it so that when you are sleeping, your sleep will be deeper and more restful, and you won't feel groggy the next day like you would from a sleeping pill. You can also consider hops extracts. Like hops extract is great because it can have an effect. We touched base on the last episode about the different estrogen receptors, A and B, or alpha and beta, and what that can do. Hops can help you get more towards the healthier beta receptor, so it has other benefits for that besides helping you sleep better. So hops is a great extract to use for females in perimenopause to improve sleep and other concerns. Melatonin fits into that list too, and a lot of people have already tried that. And if you've tried melatonin and it didn't work, the two things are to consider. If you're trying to use it for staying asleep and not falling asleep, it doesn't typically have the best effect. And the next thing is dose. When I first started in practice, melatonin was often prescribed at 1 milligram, 2 milligrams. Now you see that it's often prescribed at a much higher level. You see up to more in like 5, 10, 15 milligram increments. So if you tried it before and it didn't help with anything, maybe you could see how much you were taking. You might not have been taking enough. But if you took it and it didn't help, and then the next day it made you feel kind of groggy or headachy, that's a pretty good sign that melatonin's not going to be the right fit for you. So now that we talked about the waking patterns, which was point number 1, and we talked about a few basic remedies you can use for point number 2, we want to talk more in depth about the progesterone aspect of it. So, as I mentioned, when progesterone drops, there's herbal extracts you can use to help your body with progesterone, but at this point when progesterone's dropping in perimenopause, I just don't find that the herbal extracts cut it. So examples of these that you might have heard of or seen people use would be things like Vitex, which is called chasteberry. This is very commonly used to help the body with its progesterone use. This would be more important if you're dealing with progesterone issues with, say, a fertility case or irregular periods or painful periods. This is where Vitex would play more of a role for progesterone. For perimenopause, though, I do find that actual bioidentical progesterone works significantly better. The other factor that you need to consider when it comes to progesterone and sleep is the way that you take it. So we in naturopaths in Ontario, we use topical progesterone, and the vast majority of the times that works well to improve a female's sleep for perimenopause. Now, in terms of dosing it, you would be using this if you still have your cycle and your sleep is only off during the second half of your cycle, which is, again, ovulation until the start of your period. You would only be using the progesterone during that time. So for the first 2 weeks of your cycle, you don't take anything. For the second 2 weeks, you use the progesterone. If your sleep is off all the time and it fits that progesterone pattern, then you'd be using it all of the time. But sometimes clients use progesterone topical and they don't see the effect that they want. The next aspect would be if you talk to your pharmacist about getting progesterone in an oral form. Oral progesterone improves the effect or the aspect of sleep more than just the topical progesterone does. So I always have people start with topical progesterone, but you keep that in your back pocket that if you need to, you can switch to oral progesterone to get a better sleep. Going back to last podcast when we were talking about estrogen and different uses of estrogen and risks, and I said don't use oral estrogen, the same rule does not apply to progesterone. So Oral progesterone is not a concern, whereas I really strongly encourage people to only use estrogen topically, not orally. Point number 4 would be that if you're waking up, you're falling asleep, you're not waking at 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., but then you're always waking up about an hour or two before your alarm, say that 4 to 5 a.m. time, or 4:30 to 5:30, and then you're just laying there stuck awake, this is a lot more common to be an adrenal issue. And I guess I really should backtrack. Sometimes you'll see if the adrenal issues are really bad and the stress is really bad, that plays a role in someone's initial ability to fall asleep too. But I don't usually find that the stress and adrenal issues are disrupting the sleep as much around between 1 in the morning and 3 in the morning. That's progesterone. If it's problems falling asleep initially, sometimes it's adrenals, but almost always when you're waking up at 4:30 to 5:30 in the morning and you don't want to because your alarm's not going off till 7, that's working with adrenals in your cortisol. Typically what happens is that just kind of like your progesterone cycles in waves throughout the month, cortisol cycles and goes through waves throughout the day. The more stress that you have, the more cortisol you're going to produce. If you get enough cortisol, it wakes you up. So around 4 and 5 in the morning is the part of the wave in which cortisol is peaking to its highest point. And if it's added stress, which peaks it even higher, it's enough that people wake up and then they just can't fall back asleep and they're doomed to lay there in bed until their alarm goes off a couple hours later. To deal with that, the most important thing is to deal with the root cause, which does not mean you're starting with just adrenal support, though that is encouraged. Dealing with the root cause means, why are you stressed? Like, is there a relationship issue? Is it a work issue? Is it a family issue? If you can sort those things out first, then you can work on supporting the adrenal glands. The other thing is that sometimes you've been through all of this stress, you had these waking issues, and you've resolved the stress, but then you're still waking up. And at that point, it's because you've had enough stress that it's affected your adrenal glands, and you need to do the extra work to support them. So that's where using more calming adrenal herbs, like things like, I like to use ashwagandha in situations like that. Rhodiola kind of fits. Holy basil. All of these are calming adrenal support herbs that you can use while you're waiting for your adrenals to improve, so that you can get that nice and cortisol levels to balance out, so you can sleep better through the early mornings until your alarm goes off. So the biggest thing that people often say is like, well, I've tried natural remedies and they didn't work for me. Or I tried this, I tried valerian, or I tried melatonin and it didn't work for me. And what I'm hoping is that from this talk is that you've realized that each remedy and each treatment is specific based on the type of pattern of sleep issues that you're having. So the pattern helps determine the imbalance, and then the imbalance will help indicate which remedy you should use and which ones are going to have the effect that you need. And in doing it that way. So sometimes too, people think that, you know what, my sleep issues started way before menopause, so therefore it's not my hormones, it must just be just the way I'm wired, I'm doomed not to sleep. And that is also not going to be true, because progesterone levels, as I mentioned, they can start dropping by age 30. So even if you didn't go menopause to age 50, you've got like a 20-year window of progesterone dropping, and sleep issues. I always find sleep issues are the first sign of perimenopause starting. So the moment you start seeing that, you already know that the hormones are shifting. And finally, I know we touched base on sleep hygiene initially. I feel like I'm bouncing around a little bit today, but I want to make sure we get all these points across. Don't forget about caffeine. There's so many times that I have clients come in and I'm saying, well, They have sleep issues, they've got anxiety issues, both of those are linked with progesterone, but I gotta ask, how much coffee are you drinking? And then they'll say, well, coffee doesn't affect my sleep. How much coffee are you drinking? 3-5 cups a day, but it doesn't affect my sleep. And I'm like, well, how do you know coffee doesn't affect your sleep when you're telling me that your sleep sucks and you're feeling anxious all the time and you've never tried reducing your coffee? Please try reducing your coffee. I don't want to be the naturopathic devil, so I don't tell people that they have to stop coffee altogether. But if I can get you on 1 coffee a day, switch some of those other coffees to herbal teas that support the adrenals, or a nighttime one that induces a deeper sleep, or things that improve your immune function, almost always you will see a reduction in anxiety and an improvement in sleep. So, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but pulling back on your coffee will make a big difference. And if you are at the point where hot flashes are playing a role, coffee really makes hot flashes worse. So there's just another reason to get used to your 1 cup of coffee a day or less, enjoy it. I hope you love it, and then pull back on the other ones, and you will be feeling better because of that. So that's everything for today. I hope that was helpful, and this could be of service for you. This is Doc Yates, and I am signing off. Thanks for tuning in to Simply Health. If you want to learn more about health, check out Able Health. If you want to see some of the other projects that I've been working on in health, business, music, and life, please check out the links below.